All right, hello everyone. This is Joe Saz from BLOCKTV talking here with Murad Mahmudov, and we're going to be discussing is the bottom in? This is kind of a big question in the space, especially with all the recent price action, including the massive pump that kind of put us into it broke through heavy resistance at 4,300 and it put us on a different plane. So now we're going to start talking about has this changed things? Where do we stand on, bearish, neutral, bullish, and just kind of discuss this using charts and make the best educated guesses we can with, our best prediction model. So, Murad, please introduce yourself.
Hello, guys. Joe, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Murad Mahmudov, otherwise known on Twitter as Murad. Sort of a cryptocurrency analyst, researcher, trader, and as of late, a fund manager as well. But very excited to be here, very excited to delve into this topic.
Yeah, me too. This is the topic, man. Like, this is the hot topic right now for technical analysts. So I'm really excited to talk about this too. And I think everyone pretty much knows my position. So do you want to just hit the ground running and start, with a little bit of background into, what your position is? Is the bottom in? Are we looking at a bull cycle? Is there anything that made that decision switch from bearish to bullish? Let's just start. Let's jump right in.
Yeah. So I believe that the bottom is in, pretty much, and I think there's an overwhelming amount of evidence over the last 2 weeks that the bottom is in, and we can kind of go about discussing it step by step. But essentially, I think the bottom is in. Frankly, I expected lower prices back when I was making some predictions in February, but I'll be the first to admit that my prediction that we will go below 3,100 was clearly wrong. But now I think there's just too much evidence both on the technical side as well as on the on-chain side that the bottom is likely in, at least if we compare what happened during the previous bottoms and during the previous early bulls. I think it's fair to say that we are in the very early stages of the next bull cycle.
Well, that's interesting. I know like a lot of people are excited to hear that. Twitter is buzzing. It's been ever since that pump. Maybe even since like that ascending triangle from that 3,100 territory. I think a lot of bulls were starting to get excited, and then we had that pump, and I think that really instigated a lot of positive emotion in the space. I personally felt like the bulls were running out of steam, and then we have a massive whale accumulator that bought 20,000 Bitcoin, right? And that tore through the resistance, the 4,300 overhead resistance that was violently rejected each time we hit it. So I'm curious to see what your points are. Did you want to like pull up some charts and go through the history and explain why you think, comparing to previous cycles, why we're in a bullish pattern right now?
Yeah, for sure. And I guess I'll go ahead and screen share some of the charts.
Awesome.
Okay. So do let me know if you can see this.
I'll let you know in just a sec. I'm actually just getting this link up on Twitter too, because I forgot to throw this out there. All right, so it's now up, and let's see. I'll let you know if I'm seeing any screen share right now. I currently. Are you there still?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Yep. I just saw that.
Okay. So you're seeing the chart, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is something that people call inverse NVT. I know a lot of people have some reservations against NVT because there are certain theoretical ways in which it can be manipulated. there's several things I'll say about this. First of all, I don't
For
think
any
that many.
newcomers, what is NVT?
NVT is the network to value. The um, network value to transactions ratio. It was invented by I believe Willy Woo and Chris Berniski were some of like the earliest people to start talking about this a couple of years ago. But essentially, it shows how it shows that there are certain correlations between the market capitalization of Bitcoin and also the amount of volume that is being seen on chain. And some people have posited that there are certain cycles that correspond to Bitcoin price cycles as well in the NVT itself. Now, a lot of people as of late have been raising up some concerns that NVT can be manipulated because certain whales can be essentially either increasing, like just sending money back and forth, or in various artificial ways, sort of manipulating the volume. But there are certain heuristics and there are certain methodologies to sort of discount sort of repeat sends by similar people and things like that that people are working on. But this is essentially inverse NVT. It's 1 divided by NVT. And the reason I bring this up is to show that what we saw in January 2015 and what we saw in December 2018, there's a very, very similar sort of signature here, which is essentially a spike in velocity. And a lot of people that saw the bottoming area in December 2018, they were concerned that there wasn't like a capitulation signature from a traditional technical sense. And I think the reason for that is there's several reasons for that. I think that essentially the markets are getting less illiquid in Bitcoin and the order books are getting deeper. That's why you're not seeing those kinds of panics anymore. From a technical and infrastructure point of view, there are also more exchanges with more sort of respective deeper order books and such.
Mm-hmm.
And last but not least, I think in general, in 2015, some people still had a view that Bitcoin could still disappear or go down. But I think in 2018, 2019, the confidence in the future of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies overall is much stronger. And that's why you're seeing sort of less panicky sells and local capitulations when they do occur on all time frames. So I think because of this sort of from a technical point of view, when you're looking at the candles and you're looking at exchange volume, things like that, it's like it looks less scary. But here in the velocity, you can see that there was a spike in velocity sort of during that week. And similar thing has happened in December 2018. So this is kind of one of the 5 or 6 pieces of evidence that I have that that essentially marked the bottom. Unfortunately,
let me jump in for 1 second real quick. I noticed that the chat is disabled in this YouTube channel, so if you guys if anyone has questions, post them in the comments and in like the comments below the video, so I'll be able to bring anything up that I see there. And just to note, so Murad, in case anyone's new here, on your chart, we're looking at the blue space in the chart is the Bitcoin price action over time, and that appears to be on a log chart. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so the blue is price action, Bitcoin's price action, and the black line is the NVT. That's the transaction on chain, right? Transaction velocity, essentially.
This is the inverse NVT.
Yeah.
So this is not the NVT. Yeah, this is the inverse NVT, which I essentially put up because it's the spike in velocity is clearer this way. So essentially, an NVT is network value to transaction ratio, and velocity is essentially the inverse of that. So it's 1 divided by NVT.
Understood. So I just wanted to make that point clear so anyone watching can kind of understand that this line is moving along the price of Bitcoin in its entirety. Is that BLX, the Bitcoin total chart, the Bitcoin liquid index in the background? Yeah, so on the log chart. So I'm just making sure everyone understands, because I'm pretty sure we'll have some new users that are curious about, the space, the technical analysis space. So I just want to make sure we have a nice educational foundation here. So I'm sorry for interrupting you. Please continue. I believe
Yeah,
you're
so that
muted.
was that was pretty much it on this side. I just sort of wanted to share that bottoming signature here. I also got a couple of other charts to share as well. I mean, just sort of very quickly, like if you look at the inverse of that, you can see that we are sort of starting to once again. So we delved into that normalization area, and once again after this pump, we're sort of starting to get into the normal zone. Now, kind of the good thing in general, I will say that like I kind of was joking to somebody a couple of days ago. I said that the bad news is that the bottom is in, but the good news is that we'll likely see several more weeks or even months of accumulation. And I believe that in the grand scheme of things, like the next 3 or 4 months is still a very, very good entry sort of for the upcoming 4 or 5 year bull wave, so to speak, right? And essentially here you can see that even though it's slowly after this pump, the pump is countered here, even though we're starting to get into the normal area, the final proper heavy accumulation is still going to happen when we're going to go lower and lower in this green band. So even if the bottom is in, I think that there's still weeks of accumulation ahead, which is I guess is a good sign for people who are still having long essentially.
Absolutely agree. I do think that this humongous move out of 4K territory and into 5, I think that probably turned some people off of their, immediate accumulation desire, right? Because it's like we just it wasn't a very organic exit from such an overhead resistance at 4,300. If we here, and let me explain. I'll do a quick screen share for anyone watching here. I'm going to explain the what I'm referring to. So this is the all right. So quick history here. Bitcoin peaked back here in December 2017, and let's make this a little smaller. And then we entered a descending triangle pattern, and that's pretty evident by this flat line down here, and then a descending pattern right along here. So we kept having, we kept bouncing with the high, and then a bounce with the lower high, a bounce with the lower high, and ultimately led us to a descending triangle formation with an ultimate, very dramatic breakdown here. A little bounce back, but this is kind of where the resistance began. This bounce ended and took us to a new low, and this area became a very heavy overhead resistance, as seen by each time that we reached this point. Even with all the hope, there, as a technical analyst, people were looking at this inverse head and shoulders pattern. This would be the shoulder, and then this would be the head, and then this would be the other shoulder. And typically, what people were looking for was a move back up here, short move back up here, and breakout. But that went sideways. We hit that resistance, and then we broke down violently. We created a higher low. We moved. Oh, whoops! I did not mean to do that. Created a higher low, and then we moved back up to that resistance level after a couple serious moves. These were 5+% moves. We broke down again from 4,300 resistance, created yet another higher low, and now you could see that it was where the 50 moving average began to act as support, the 50 moving average being this brown one, or like orangish color. So then we started to make our move back, and this is when I was saying that the bulls appear to be running out of steam. This was, some were looking at this as a nice, slow, steady grind to this area, and that was going to be very bullish in the opinion of some respected technical analysts. But what ended up happening was we reached this line, and then there was a massive destruction of this overhead resistance, and it was, Murad, do we both agree that the whale was, is that something that you subscribe to, or is that something that you disagree with?
I think everything was essentially done to cause as sharp of a move as possible. Essentially, taking advantage. If you study some of the things that Coinmetrics and TradeBlock have been putting out regarding sort of what's been going on exchanges and on the blockchain during that day, it seems that the buyers have deliberately done this at 4:30 UTC, I believe, which is statistically is the time when order books are the least liquid. And essentially, this is essentially despite the size of the trade, it's also sort of using the liquidity to boost the move up as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. So we had a massive move. So you're saying that there is more than one factor. I definitely see the whale being a big part of it, triggering all as well as a single accumulator buying 7,000 Bitcoin on 3 separate exchanges: Coinbase Pro, Kraken, and one in Europe. I can't remember the name. 7,000 Bitcoin with heavy upward momentum. On top of that, that triggered a lot of stop buys and whatever bot activity was involved in that as well. So we broke through, and so far, I'm going to pull up a 15-minute chart here, and here's the action on a smaller candles. Here's the massive move, a very short time frame. And this is, for any newcomer, this isn't uncommon in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency to have massive moves to the upside in very small amounts of time. And that's Murad, do you have anything you want to say about that, adding to the the volatility of this market, just to give people a word of warning?
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, Bitcoin is still a relatively illiquid market and a relatively illiquid instrument. So we definitely need to be aware that a relatively small number of parties can definitely have an undue influence on Bitcoin price. And essentially, everybody should be aware of that when they're trading or investing in Bitcoin. I think many people agree that the overall long-term trend, regardless of these kinds of shenanigans, is bullish. But like in the short term, you should definitely be aware of sort of uh, a lot of these Bart and March patterns, so to speak, that can emerge.
hmm So since this pump, we had, I'm going to zoom in here so the audience can see, we had a nice, decent looking pullback, and this was a little more organic of a pullback, I would say. I wasn't I would say this was a comfortable pullback for me. Typically, I like to see a little more, but this was fair. We had a little bit of a wick, and this is what I drew as my upside resistance, right? And we created in another ascending triangle pattern. We created an ascending triangle pattern, and that led us to a small breakout to 5,300, creating a new high. So what I see here is a channel, right, where we have this 4,600 low, an ascending pattern from there, 4,600 or so, yeah, 4,700 low from the pullback from the whale pump and all the subsequent market activity. A move with the breakout, small breakout to the upside, sideways action like crazy. A new, longer, slower descending, ascending triangle, small breakout, ending in a very small breakout, capping out at 5,500. Now, I was expecting this breakout to be a move closer to 5,800. So I personally think that the bulls are still running low on momentum. This breakout, in my opinion, should have been much stronger. But it was capped out at around 5,500, went sideways, and then we broke down into the 49s, back into 4K territory. We dipped our toes back in that water. That to me wasn't a good sign. But here we are on a slower ascent. So this is a fan pattern where you have a steep ascent, a less steep ascent, and then a much less steep ascent. This is plus 45 degrees, 30 degrees, and now we're looking at 25 or something, right? It's getting shallower and shallower. And so this to you is still indicative, or there is still a signature in your opinion that we will be breaking above this resistance line at 5,300 range. And so what do you think? Oh yeah, let's start there. What do you think is up next? Do you want to pull up your charts and I'll stop sharing, or did you want to comment on anything that I was showing the audience?
Uh, I guess the bullish scenario here is something like this. Uh, I have sort of some similar structures drawn to you as well. I think
All right.
if we do break out of this sort of ascending triangle structure, we're going to 57, 5,800 at least. But I do expect a pullback afterwards if this does happen. In general, I would say that my view is that over the next 3 or 4 months, we will simply be ranging between um, 4 and 6,000. And I think that overall area will be sort of what they call a reaccumulation area.
Mm-hmm.
I guess perhaps what's more useful is to show sort of what's going on the daily as well. I think one bullish case is that the golden cross is coming on the daily when the 50 MA is going to cross the 200 MA.
Here,
I think
quickly,
the
how much weight are you putting on that? Because that is huge, right? Bullish and bearish crossovers, especially of big moving averages, are significant, right?
yes.
So, like, what do you see? Are you expecting a continued trend move or a counter trend move with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely not a bearish sign. And coming back to our topic about whether the bottom is in or not, I think sort of the volume that you see here on this time at least, it kind of confirms sort of the more capitulation-y nature here, and then sort of a breakout nature here, right? And I think if you look at OBV as well, OBV has shot up significantly. It not only broke the resistance of 4,200 here, but it also broke its resistance that we had from all the way from 6K. So a lot of accumulation has been happening here for sure. Significant accumulation has happened during this pump and after this pump as well. So I think, like, coming back to the topic of whether the bottom is in, I think all of these signals put together, they definitely signify that the likelihood that the bottom is in. Now, just a couple of other quick charts I'll add. I'm not going to go too into detail, but essentially, if you delve into some of the articles and topics that my partners David Creel and Willie Wu have been putting out, so realized price, balanced price, delta price, a lot of these indicators have been catching the bottom, so to speak, quite successfully, and then subsequent accumulation quite successfully in past bottoms. And we saw quite miraculously once again that the delta price and the balance price caught the bottom and caught the accumulation quite well this time around. And now we have broken through realized capitalization, realized price. Now realized price, which is around, I believe, 4,200 right now, is going to become strong support if the cycle is to play anything similarly to previous ones. But essentially, this is also sort of evidence that the bottom is in. If you like to dig into deeper detail, I suggest sort of reading some of the articles that David Quill and Willie Wu have been putting out over the last couple of weeks.
And that's to say, Willie Wu, you can find him on Twitter as well. And who else?
David Quill.
David Quill. Okay, so for anyone in the audience that wants to explore other analysts, please feel free to look at them. I believe Willie Wu is highly respected in the space. I've seen a lot of his work and I like it. I don't know the other individual, but yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting topic because, yeah, that chart that you just showed, I think that one was made by Willie Wu, right? Or was that one yours?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of all worked on it together, but that
Okay.
was built using the Willie Wu's platform. Yep.
So that does appear to have called the bottom in the previous bear market. Do you think that, this one of these phrases that sticks to me in technical analysis is everything happens until it doesn't, right? Every golden cross is a bullish bullish outlook, and until it isn't. Every XYZ indicator telling you that this prediction is going to happen, it works until it doesn't. So how much weight are you putting on this being the bottom and us entering a bull phase? Are you 60-40, 70-30, 100? Where do you land on the bottom being in?
I would say 75-25.
Okay. And actually, one of the things to bring it back, I agree with you. I definitely agree with you on the floor. I feel like in order for me to be convinced that a bottom is in, I want to see how we react to 4,300 again. I want to see us, like, because I don't feel comfortable. To me, there is a distinction between a whale accumulator smashing overhead resistance. Then there's a difference between that and hopeful bulls that threw everything they had to kill that resistance and shake the bears out. And I don't feel like that's what happened. That's why I'm not 100% sold just yet that we could that we might not be making that we might be making lower lows or whatever the case is. I'm still that fact that the whale accumulator by purchasing a total of just over 20K Bitcoin and shredding that overhead resistance himself or herself or whatever, that doesn't really give me confidence that that an organic market is really forming. And obviously, one person buying a lot of Bitcoin, that's organic, of course, right? But I still don't feel like a destruction of overhead resistance at that level is the same as if the bulls rallied as a massive group of people around the globe. The bulls rallied through their $100, their $25, their $1,000, and had this massive accumulation of 20,000 Bitcoin split between 100,000 people. Is there a distinction to you between those, in your opinion?
Yeah, I agree with you that we definitely need more than one of these huge moves up, and we want to see more follow through. But nevertheless, I think the fact that that much money is even entering the space by just a few individuals, to me, is definitely not a bearish signal. And I think that I agree that I want to see a retest of 4,500, 4,300 at least, and see how we react there. But if that acts as support and bounces there, I would definitely be even more confident in the fact that the bottom is in.
Just so you know, I couldn't see your face there. If you wouldn't mind switching to camera when you're talking, so we can see you. Yeah, so we kind of agree that this was an interesting breakthrough of that 4,300 territory, the breakthrough to the upside into 5K. I agree with you that 4K is an interesting. If the 3,100 bottom is in, I definitely agree with you that 4K to 5,800, 6K is probably going to be the range that we trade in, and 4K will likely be the accumulation spot. 6K will probably be where people start to sell and move us back to 4K over the next. I'm not confident in saying May will be the beginning of a full-blown bull trend, but I am confident in saying that I think for a while, like a good another 3 to 6 months, I do think that we're looking at a sideways range. I just, again, to me, after seeing that daily chart, looking at the volume, looking at that final slow grind up to 4,300, that tells me the bulls were dropping change in the barrel. There was so little momentum left, and then it was a massive move that gave the bulls hope. And still to this day, stacking sats is the Twitter term for people throwing, say, $20 out of their paycheck every Friday or every other Friday, or $100 or 125, or small amounts, but accumulation, right? And that's definitely a bullish thing. But the question is there enough money in those pockets to really create a bull market? And that's where I say I'm neutral bearish on that, because it's been a long slow grind, and I think that bulls, yeah, they might keep stacking $20 here and there every Friday or whatever, but I also am not confident that that's going to be enough to convince a big accumulator sitting on Bitcoin that we're in a bull market. And someone might just, the longer we go sideways, someone might just say, you know what, I'm done. Like, I think we've capped out. I think we're 5,800 isn't happening. The next stop is 43. I'm going to sell. What do you think?
That's definitely possible, and it will be very important for us to watch how whether we can break through 54, 54.50 once again or not. I do agree with you. You raised a very good point that sort of the slope of the grind up has been sort of steadily declining, which in and of itself is not a very bullish sign. Now, you do see that happening in ascending triangles quite often, but I think that it will be very important to sort of see. We could also have a fake out. We could also have a tiny, tiny, tiny breakout, and then sort of followed by a subsequent collapse. I personally do think we will see us enter the price entering in the 4,000s a couple more times in the coming months. But in any case, I expect this sort of be the second level of accumulation overall. And then, as I've said, the 4 to 6K area is going to be the area of heavy accumulation for the next 3 or 4 months, in my opinion.
You said 4 months or so to a year?
Yeah, 3 to 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, this sounds about right, considering and I believe most importantly, comparing apples to apples. Bitcoin has had a solid two bear markets, right? I mean, some of them were faster than others, but the most recent one, the 2013, 2014 area into 2015, is definitely one of the best comparisons to a Bitcoin bear market. And I'll pull up that chart just so people can see what we're talking about here, and we'll get your commentary on this. And I think you and I have even looked at this together. My This is just something quickly that we should note since we're here. it looks like there's been a pretty steep increase in shorts, 14% relative to a, let's see down here, nearly 7% increase in long positions, followed by a downside move today. So that's just showing you that I think a lot of people are definitely starting to feel like this is a trade zone. Um, so here's the bearish comparison, right? This is 2013, the run up, the significant run up into the all-time high being at the time, capping out at 1177, and then beginning our descending triangle back a number of years ago. And here we are. This is the present bear market, where we began this high, the high of on Coinbase Pro, at least, or GDAX at the time, a high of 19,697, and the same thing, a descending triangle, and then ending in a breakdown. Now, I note that there's a lot more volatility in this descending triangle than in this descending triangle. It's almost like we, had some moves. We went sideways, we went up, we went sideways. We ultimately broke down, but our breakdown was seriously, it was so weak. It was right on the bottom line of the descending triangle. So this was this was far less dramatic than this bear market, where we had the descending triangle, a very steep breakdown. And could this just be what should have been, something closer to this period of time, or maybe even something like this, where we had a spike of hope, but then a continuation to new lows? Do you have anything, while we leave this chart up? Do you want me to point anything out? Do you have anything you want to say?
So I think it's an interesting comparison, but I think that the on-chain evidence that I'm seeing right now is telling me that that was likely the bottom already, and the final
Okay.
bottom is behind us. Yeah.
So we don't need to spend any more time on this. And let me stop sharing. So yeah, what other points do you have any other points that you want to make to talk about as the bottom end? And then before we end out, let's end this. Let's talk a little bit about current price action, and maybe what we see happening over the next 3 weeks or something like that, just to give viewers some sort of prediction that we can look at together, and leave the viewers with something to look at.
I would say that I'm currently neutral to bullish, but in the short term, and in the medium term, I would say that we still have one last major short in us left, so to speak. I recommend most investors and traders don't even engage in a lot of shorting during sort of the bull run, or the core sort of chunk of the bull run, because a lot of the times the risk reward is simply not there, and sort of longing fundamentally and then buying the dips is just better risk reward, because you'll be betting with the trend. But essentially, I think we still have one last short left in the system. If we, of course, personally, I would much rather be shorting if we break out of here and sort of the bulls get a bit more euphoric locally. But personally, I'm watching sort of this ascending triangle, or this range sort of bound action, before sort of deciding either way.
Awesome. And so let's just let me pull you out of your comfort zone for a sec. Let's say you're wrong. Well, what would be the point at which you say, "Oh man, things aren't looking so good." Say we break beneath 4,300 and it looks nasty. The overhead resistance is back. Is there any condition where and this is, I want viewers real quick to understand, in technical analysis, making long-term predictions is tough. Making any prediction is tough. So facts change in Bitcoin every 2 minutes. So it's okay for a technical analyst to change their mind, especially when they're doing so and they're constantly updating the audience. So with that being said, Murad, is there a scenario where you think that your neutral bullish outlook overall, the 3,100 bottom is in, the 43 resistance is the higher low, where we're going to be going sideways, testing between that and 4,500, capped out at 6K and for the next 3 to 4 months? Is there a scenario? So that's the bullish scenario. Do you have a bearish scenario that you'd like to discuss?
I mean, the 4,300 area is the key here. I agree with you wholeheartedly that if that breaks down, then essentially all bets are off, and we need to reevaluate everything immediately. but something's telling me that a lot of people will be buying sort of in the 4,000s.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna put some weight on that. I think this market has shifted, and I think hope is very palpable. And that's actually, believe it or not, that's what scares me the most. The fact that the hope is so palpable, and the bottom, as we look at it, it felt more like a price discovery bottom. Let's bring up the bottom chart and comment on it real quick. Um, let's get here on the daily. We're looking at here's the bottom right now. The bottom, when we reached it, I'm doing this again. Let me lock this. All right, here's the bottom, December 14th, December 14th and 15th range, right? We have this really weird bottom to me. Like we did have a nice bounce out of there, a very beautiful, violent move to the upside, but we still had a price discovery phase, and it took a little while here, like a slow, shallow descent, and then we went sideways for 3 days before someone, or the market deciding that, what, this is a comfortable re-entry point. So let's talk about this bottom. Is this a bottom that you feel comfortable with calling a bottom? Looking at this alone, at the time, I know we had a couple of thoughts on it. If this bottom is in, I think we said that this is going to be a weird bottom. And if that's the case, then why is this a weird bottom to you?
Yeah, so the reason why it's a weird bottom is because you haven't seen like a capitulation in the short term at all. There's no big wicks, there's no big volume spikes, like at least in like during that lowest point locally, right?
Hmm.
Um, but I think that the people who were expecting that were sort of studying the previous cycles too much. And I think if this is the bottom, then it's telling us that the way sort of bottoms and likely tops happen is a little bit different than before. There's a lot more sort of quote unquote front running involved. There's a lot more. There's a lot more confidence in Bitcoin involved, and there's a lot more liquidity. So you see less of these sharp moves. And I think because of this, like these are the factors that explain why it's like shaped differently.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm definitely willing to, and that's the thing, willing to change my mind here. I just like, I'm not comfortable. You're right. There's no big wicks. There wasn't like a huge wick to the downside and then a refusal of that price. And then similar to the wick back in, I want to say closer to February. I'm gonna have to go like this over here. This was a very distinct, uh, well, this wasn't quite a hammer, but this is the wick that I'm assuming this is the type of wick you're referring to in a bottom that you'd like to see. Am I correct?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people were expecting something like this,
Yeah,
but
this. Mhm.
yeah, but it looks like instead of having like one sharp day or even one sharp week down, what we had was sort of prolonged sell-off, and then like that whole area, like that those whole 2 weeks preceding that final bottom,
Mhm.
I guess they can be seen as sort of one long steady capitulation as opposed to just one sharp one.
Interesting. Yeah, that's actually the first time I've heard that. That is interesting to me. I think the reason why I feel a little uncomfortable saying the word capitulation right now is because what I feel like is the descent from the descending triangle breakdown was a technical move. There was also an external narrative, but it wasn't very capitulation-y because to me, the psychology I want to see in capitulation is I give up. And I haven't seen rage quitters. I haven't seen hope go from like the hope is still palpable, like I said earlier, right? It's still stacking stats. It's still very positive. There's so much hopeful momentum in the space right now, and I wanted to see something more like I wanted to see some rage quitters. I wanted to see people say, "I'm done with crypto. Crypto killed me. I'm out." I saw one guy tweet something similar to that, and he said, "If XRP drops below," he threw his last money in XRP. He said, "If it dropped below 35 cents, he's out for good." That's one person that I saw rage quit crypto. Not that I'm watching everyone, but I'm expecting, to see a lot more rage quitting before I'm comfortable calling a phase a capitulation phase. Now, back then it was almost like everyone was silent. We're looking at, that, or in that range of time, it was the holidays, it was Thanksgiving, that definitely had a signature of despair. and there was like that was definitely, I remember sitting through that and being like, oh man, like you felt some of that negative emotion, but it was met with immediate hope, and that hope is what I want to see dissipate before and turn, actually not dissipate, turn to rage before I call something capitulation. Now, and I think maybe we agree that that would be a weird bottom for then multiple reasons. Me for psychological reasons, as well as the technical outlook of what should have been maybe a steep wick and then a heavy move out, a hammer looking like a Morningstar Doji type scenario. So I think that's an interesting point that you made, and I think we agree for similar reasons that it would be a weird bottom. Yeah, is there anything on the top of your head to discuss about anything else going on technically?
I mean, that's pretty much it. One last thing I would say is that a lot of people still think that the massive altcoin performance since January is a bearish signal, but because like altcoins must die before Bitcoin continues. But I think that's just essentially hopeful thinking. I think altcoins will still survive for another 10 or 15 years or so, and essentially, I don't consider that a bearish signal. I think it's a bullish signal, and I think that speculative spirits and animal spirits are essentially returning to the market. To me, that's not a bearish sign.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of alts, yeah, typically when Bitcoin makes a move, alts make a move. And if when I was talking with Tyler, and I actually agree with this, if Bitcoin makes a move to the downside, you can typically see harder. All coins will make a heavier move to the downside. If say Bitcoin drops 5%, all coins will drop further. If Bitcoin moves up, then all coins move up further. So I do feel like there is something about the relationship between Bitcoin and altcoins. I do think that there needs to be and that's one of my questions. Are we going to double bubble here? Are we going to have the altcoin bubble and the Bitcoin all-time high bubble pop in the same bear market? That's a question that I explore a little bit. I'm not 100% sold. I think the next bear market might have a lot more to do with altcoins than this one does. And I don't think we're looking at it. It's possible we might not be looking at a double bubble, but I do think that this is an interesting space to speculate. It's extremely volatile. There's a lot of emotion that drives that volatility, and but I personally feel like as happy as the bulls are, they had their money in Bitcoin. They're sitting on Bitcoin. They're not sitting on cash. So I think that there needs to be money entering the space. And you mentioned that you think that there's another big short coming in. Yeah, definitely. If we don't ever see 4,300, I'm going to be very surprised. If we don't retest what was once a strong overhead resistance, then I'm gonna feel uncomfortable even more. It's gonna feel like we're climbing that ladder that we climbed on our way to 20K from 1K, the same ladder that we climbed from 200 to 11 to nearly 1200. And the faster we move to the upside, creating we create less support, and then the violent move to the downside, it kills people. Well, it destroys their wallets. So that's what I'm worried about here is will this hope throw us into another move that just like that gets people excited, gets the ball rolling faster than it should, and then we're right back into the same scenario where we're looking at another euphoric bubble pop.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with most of the points that you mentioned. I do think that essentially Bitcoin and altcoins will be moving sort of in lockstep like we've seen in the past. I think we can even see certain periods of Bitcoin outperformance in the earlier stages of the bull cycle. And then in the latter stages of the bull cycle, when euphoria and the percentage of retail involved is higher, then you can see sort of higher altcoin outperformance towards the end of the bull cycle and even after Bitcoin topping like we've seen last time.
So any comment on Litecoin being the first performer this bull cycle, or if this is a bull cycle?
Yeah, and I actually have a chart to share regarding this.
Cool. Yeah, because that was probably one of the things for a long time. Ethereum on BitMEX, Ethereum was kind of the driving force for the what was going to happen. That was an excellent predictor. if Ethereum started getting short liquidations, then you started to see liquidations across the board. So let me know when your chart's up, and I'll stop talking so you can share. But
Yeah, one
Litecoin.
second. Just 1 second. Yep.
I'm gonna jump. I'm gonna show the audience what I'm referring to in the Litecoin pop, so that they know what we're talking about before we jump into it. Here's Litecoin. Okay, everyone, this is really important. Litecoin had a very similar situation as Bitcoin. With this massive move to the upside. Obviously, where Charlie Lee sold his Litecoin while telling his buddies to hodl. We had a descending triangle breakdown, and now let's start zooming in. We had a heavy descending triangle breakdown, similar in lockstep to Bitcoin. We had the inverse head and shoulders. Here's the shoulder, head, and shoulder. And this, since it's upside down, this is inverse. This would statistically mean that there's a breakout to the upside happening, a very small breakout to the upside, and then we broke down, went sideways. Now, this is where it starts to be really important to note. The bottom of the descending triangle is a really important resistance zone to the upside. Litecoin so far is the only one that has made that move. Let me get rid of some of this clutter for a second. Litecoin so far appears to be, maybe other than Binance Coin, which is like another shill coin, but what we have here is we met the bottom of the descending triangle. We got close. It's also interesting to note these moving averages and how they acted as support and resistance. Broke above the moving average, broke above resistance, and had a serious pullback, but to the support of this moving average, which is the 200 moving average. We then broke again heavily and strongly above the bottom of the descending triangle, and now we've been creating higher lows, going sideways with a massive move to the upside on the I think in lock with Bitcoin during that big pump. And now we're creating, a weird pattern. But Litecoin it's really interesting to note that it led the market in this move, took us above the bottom of the descending triangle, and we haven't even tested it at a support once. So that's kind of one of the things that makes me question what's going on. Here's the bullish crossover, aka the golden cross. And this is what's happening very soon with Bitcoin on the daily, and that's what Murad was discussing. So we're looking at a bullish crossover, 50 and 200 right here. So we're going to have to see. I think if you are trading, I think this is a dangerous space, but the technicals are saying, get excited.
I would add that the last time Golden Cross happened around this time in mid 2015, it actually resulted in a collapse. But just something to look out for. But regarding Litecoin, this is the chart that I wanted to share.
Okay.
Can you see?
Yep, I can see.
Yeah, so the red is the realized value that we already talked about. The simplest way to explain what realized value is it's essentially a break-even level for all the investors in that particular asset. So if the price is at the same level as the realized value, the red line, then that means that investors are relatively break-even, and if they're above, they're already making money. And so it's interesting to note that in last time Bitcoin broke out of sort of that realized value resistance years before Litecoin did. But this time around, you can already see that the world is much more excited about altcoins much quicker, and people are front running this tremendously, months, years ahead. And essentially, the people want to gamble on alts. People want to speculate in alts. I suppose some people even want to invest in alts. And essentially everybody's like waiting patiently to try to sort of catch that next alt season.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, I guess we're kind of nearing the end. Just to reference what alt season is basically a point in time in trading crypto where alts that are, even unheard of jump 100% in a day. People are doubling their money on a daily basis if they ride the right money train and they switch they move in and out of different alts, and or even spread their investments out a little bit. Do you want to talk about trading alts for a minute, or do you want to is that just kind of side topic?
I mean, there are definitely periods where you can make a lot of money in alts. In my opinion, 99.9% of them is just a way to stack more Bitcoin, or more like useless gambling chips that people use to gamble. But so just be aware of that. I recommend most of my friends to just follow Bitcoin. But if you're trading alts, just be careful, because most of them, there's no fundamental behind it. It's completely different from Bitcoin.
Completely agree. Yeah. So, is there any final thoughts that we should be leaving with? You know, you think the bottom is in. You have some compelling evidence, and I really like those charts. Um, Man, it's really tough. You know, it's great working with all these brilliant analysts, and I'm so thankful that you took the time to come here, because very compelling points are being made by brilliant people, and it's so hard to say what's going to happen. You know, but me personally, I do believe we're looking at a lower targets. I'm a kind of a reevaluator, and I think 4,300 is going. Depending on how we look at 4,300, if we come back there, that's going to be my reevaluation. And so I'm not convinced the bottom is in yet, but I am convinced that we need to see 4,300 before any serious bullish narrative can be running the space.
That's definitely a fair position, and I'm looking forward to sort of discussing potentially some of these topics with you again if we near sort of the mid 4,000s.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll definitely stay in touch. I hope everyone all the viewers enjoyed this. Sorry the comments weren't up, but yeah, Murad, do you want to let everyone know how to contact you if they want to reach out to you personally, or Twitter?
Yeah, you can always find me on Twitter at @muststopmurad. My DMs are open, and I'm always down to have an interesting conversation.
Awesome. So Murad, you can find at @muststopmurad on Twitter. Please feel free to reach out there. And Murad, I'm definitely going to be, trying to call you back. Hopefully we start seeing some crazy moves and we have another great discussion about what's going on. Who knows what's going to happen? The facts change, and I hope you're right. It would be great. You know, a lot of bulls are rooting for you to be right too. So, let's hope everything pans out. Let's pay attention to the market, and let's revisit what happens. Next time a big price move is made, we'll be back on. Or, Block TV will be covering it for sure. Murad, I'm sure you'll be covering it with your community, and you and I will probably, let's look at this a month or 2 months from now, and let's just kind of make sure that that we're looking at the same thing.
For sure. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks again for your time, Rod, and everyone. Thanks for tuning in. This was hosted by Block TV. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe_Saz. You can also email me, joe@blocktv.com. I'm always responsive. Always want to help. Always producing content that the audience is curious about. So I'm looking forward to creating this two-way street. And feel free to contact either of us at any time. Again, Murad, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.